Welcome to Speedrunner Reviews. In this series I analyse games using the mindset of speedrunning and look at the game from three perspectives. First, the casual experience, which is how most people first play the game. Next, the speedrunning experience, including all the interesting tech and how well the game holds up as a speed game. And finally, the tool-assisted speedrun, showing what the game looks like when pushed to the theoretical limit. If you already know the game and want to jump straight to the speedrun part, I've left timestamps in the description and chapters on the video. Today we're looking at Taz Wanted for the PS2, GameCube, PC, etc. Before we get stuck into it, if you do end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing to keep up to date, as it helps out the channel a whole bunch, and I have these videos out every fortnight. So before we get into Taz Wanted, I want to take you back to the late 90s and early 2000s. So I started off with the Sega Master System and Mega Drive, which are brilliant consoles, and pretty much I was too young to play it, so I just got mum to play through Sonic over and over so I could see the credits. These consoles were sort of hand-me-downs from various relatives, and I had a lot of fun with them. The first console we got sort of new was the N64. That's my brother playing it there, and he was super hyped. You'll see me get pretty hyped in a second on the side there. We were so excited to have a new console, and even though it had been out for a couple years then, we were still just thrilled to have it. I still remember getting this, playing Banjo-Kazooie, Diddy Kong Racing, Mario Party, and experiencing a whole new world of 3D. Also, I know it's a bit of a meme now, but even a kid can figure out how to hold an N64 controller. Little did we know though, those hands would be very soon covered in blisters from a certain minigame. So overall, getting a new console like this was such an exciting experience, but at the end of the day, I didn't really remember a time before having the N64. I was probably 3 or 4 at the time, and realistically, it just felt like it went on the top of the Sega pile. We would often go over to our cousin's house and play their N64, but one year they had this new game. Now, all I knew this as was the dancing character on the loading screen game, because I used to get up and dance along with this guy and never actually played much of the game itself. But little did I know, that game was on a brand new console, the PS2. I was aware of the PS1 having played it at a neighbour's house, but this was just brand new to me. And a couple Christmases after playing it at my cousin's house, we got a PS2 for ourselves. Came with a few games, so we had iToy Play, which is an absolute banger, definitely worth trying. We would then get Theme Park World, which was that game with the loading screen dancing guy. Now the third game we got was a platformer. It was called Taz Wanted. I actually knew Taz from having played Tazmania on the Master System, but this was a brand new 3D adventure. I'd just come fresh off Banjo-Kazooie, and I was keen for more platforming. Let's check it out. Throughout this video I will be using footage from the PC version of the game, but that's mainly because I don't want to put you through this grainy PS2 footage. So the game starts out pretty much showing you the abilities that you'll have. Taz immediately breaks out of a cage which is holding him captive, and then he's wanted all over the game. So the object of the game is to destroy your wanted posters. You immediately find out you have this awesome spin move, and the spin goes pretty fast. It's very satisfying to platform with it. You got your standard stuff like you're running and you're jumping. You can actually eat and spit out objects at enemies, although technically you don't ever need to use that until the very final boss. So the object of the level is you want to find these Taz Wanted posters, and there's 7 of them in each level, and once you destroy all 7 you're pretty much done. You got other objectives, like you can collect these sandwiches, and if you get enough of them, you get the sandwich goal, or you can destroy objects, and if you destroy about 50% of the objects in the level, you get that goal. There's another one where there's like a hidden Golden Sam statue that you can find, but in my opinion, the funnest way to play this game is any percent and just go at all these signs and try and destroy them. Speaking of destroying signs, you might notice that sign up in the distance there is not a traditional sign, it's more of like a car thing. So that's the premise of this game. The signs are going to be in all sorts of funky locations and you have to destroy them. They're not going to be simple to figure out. Sometimes actually getting to the sign itself can be difficult. For example, here you have to hit this little switch and this will disable this box. If you run into one of these boxes, they basically punch you and send you flying the other way, and you need to disable them to get through to some of the signs like this. There's also these guards to watch out for. Now they'll chase you, and if they catch you, you're going to lose some of your bounty and you're going to get put into a cage somewhere else in the level. It's not too bad, you just break out of the cage, but it's more like annoying than anything. So the goal of the game is to build up your bounty, but nothing really happens depending on how much you have. You're still going to finish the game regardless. One way to deal with the guards here is to go into a phone box and change into costumes. Now, I actually didn't have any footage of this, but all the costumes are shown on the credits here. They have a new costume for pretty much any level, and you have an attack which can take out the guard there. If you can get used to it, a good way to avoid the guards is to jump right as they're about to hit you with the net, and that gives you a few, I guess you call them iframes from being caught. But realistically, you can just go into the phone box if you need to and get yourself a costume. I'm not going to lie, some of the signs can be a little bit cryptic, like this one here where you have to get this burp juice and then do a really big burp. And the only reason for that is if you try and spin the sign, there's honey on the ground and that stops you from getting it. Though I'm really impressed with their creativity on some of these signs, like this one where you have to buff the sign out of the floor. And they also have all these signs on slippery surfaces, so you're supposed to get, I think, the burping juice to get these, but you can just jump at them and hold spin and it still works, so once you know that, it makes the game a bit more fun, actually. So this stuff brings me down to my main criticism of this game. They shouldn't have made it a puzzle game, seriously. Like, there's nothing more frustrating than when you're trying to do something and you get caught by one of these because you haven't disabled it. Once you know everything to do, like where to disable the enemies and knowing the little secrets, like you literally have to jump down a toilet to get one of the signs, the game becomes much, much more enjoyable. So if you didn't really enjoy your first playthrough of this game, I would recommend having a second one and just zooming through it. Every subsequent playthrough just gets better and better because it becomes more of a platformer and less of a puzzle game. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not opposed to non-linear games or games where you gotta figure out what to do, but in my opinion it doesn't really complement Taz's moveset. Taz is set up to be a character kind of like Sonic, and you're expecting to just zoom around the place and have a grand old time on a linear platformer. Although having it puzzle-based really just slows it down, and if you have a first impression of this game, it can be negative because of that. That being said, my nostalgia sort of overpowered that criticism, and once you get into this game, it is extremely enjoyable. All the care and stuff with the animations is really good, so there's some pretty funny moments here, like when Taz eats this inflatable thing and then blows up. But actually, this ties into some of the progression through the game. Every level, when you finish it, you get a particular item that you bring out of the level, and those items help you reach the boss for the area. Once you got all 3 levels done in an area, you can pretty much go and use those 3 items. There's always like a creative way in which they use them, and it gets Taz towards the boss. Speaking of bosses, I had a lot of fun with these as a kid. It's just a way to like mix up the game a bit. This first one, for example, is like a game of Pong, essentially. I won't spoil the other 2 in this part of the video, but they're also quite a bit of fun. This is a rare case where the first playthrough of the game can be a bit more enjoyable than the second one for bosses, because doing this boss over and over can get a bit stale, especially if you're trying to speedrun it and go fast. Now I'm going to tell you one thing that will make your playthrough a lot more enjoyable if you're playing this game. It's got coyote jump mechanics, which means you can spin off an edge and jump out of your spin. So if you're ever struggling to make a jump, spin off an edge and jump out of it instead of trying to make the jump directly. I remember this section here being so hard as a kid, but if you understand the spin mechanics, it becomes really, really easy. Spin, jump. Although, fun thing is, if you die in this bit, you actually just respawn straight next to the sign, so it's almost optimal to just fall straight into the water for this. The other thing that's really not explained in the game is that if you charge up a spin by spinning and standing still, it will go faster when you let go of the spin. Check out this, you charge it up and you can literally just climb up the entire wall there. Normally if you just spin into the wall, you'll get stuck down on the ground, but that can help your navigation expand quite a bit knowing that. Now, I picked this up from watching the speedrun where they do it a lot more, but you can find places to do it. For example, here in this haunted level, and it skips seriously one of the most annoying rooms in the game. So if you don't skip it, this room is probably like 2 minutes of Taz walking extremely slowly because these little music things are playing. This is another thing about this game. What I was saying, it's not like a fast platformer. Here's an example. Taz is just slowed down heaps through these sections whenever that music is playing. Not only do you have to traverse the whole bottom floor here, but you have to go all the way up to the top and back around again. So knowing those little skips makes it more enjoyable on a second playthrough. So overall, look, I would recommend playing this game, but the way you're going to have to play it is play through it once, you won't enjoy it. Play through it again, you will enjoy it. Alright, so we'll move on to talking about the speedrun itself now. You can see it's a pretty quick run here. It's broken up from any percent and 100%. 100% being getting all those sandwiches, statues, and destructible objects. I will mention that the 100% requirements are a little bit different if you play on easy, medium, and hard. I don't think there's much benefit to playing on hard, so if you're playing this game, I just wouldn't mess with those settings here. Now, I played this game on PS2, GameCube, and PC, and I can say the PC version feels the best, and a lot of runs are on the PC version, but the main reason they're on PC is the loads. That's a PC load. And here's a console load. So PC is probably done at this point, but not only do you have to get through the autosave, you have to get through the entire sluggish loading screen. One other thing I'll mention about if you're playing on PS2 is that they've mapped spin to the circle button, which feels very unnatural having your attack button to the right of your jump button, whereas on GameCube and PC they seem to be mapped correctly. Well, I guess on PC you can map them to whatever you want. So yeah, don't play this game on PS2. Alright, so now we'll go into looking at the run world record in 33:46. Unfortunately the gameplay footage is a bit smaller in here, so I'm just going to blow it up a little bit bigger there. And we can see the run goes off to a pretty normal start, just spinning around, jumping around, nothing overly crazy yet. But pretty quickly he'll see some awesome strats. As I mentioned before, if you die in this water, you spawn right next to the sign itself, so that saves a whole bunch of time. And we're going to be seeing a lot of wall riding, particularly here. Charge up a spin, zoom off the boost pad, and then jump up there. That is not a jump you should be able to make. Now, one thing that they're doing is actually pausing and looking at the map. That opens a preview of what the Taz Wanted sign is going to be, and that actually helps to skip the cutscene there. So that's a goal on most Taz Wanted signs there, and it skips a cutscene, saves a bunch of time. Now, to my understanding, the timing on this is pretty precise, and it's one thing that's actually put me off running this game a bit. I've been able to play through this game in an hour, which is about twice as long as the record, but I wasn't using any cutscene skips or anything like that, and I was pretty happy with that playthrough. Beyond that, the game gets quite technical, and it is a pretty impressive run. So that's the main tech, really, and the big thing is charging up spins and going up walls. That's going to be your main physics skip, aside from those little cutscene skips here. Now this cannon here you can get to pretty easily from the start, but it must be just a little bit faster to literally go up the wall and get to this cannon. It opens up a whole lot of cool routing possibilities. Here again, landing on the boat gets rid of the Taz Wanted sign on the mast, which is very creative, and doing that little glitch skips a whole cutscene there. This one here, you're supposed to slow down with one of those record players, but if you jump in from the side like that, you can actually get the sign pretty easily. Now, one of the really cool things about this run is knowing where all the death spots respawning. We saw it before in the water, and then we have this really cool climb up the lighthouse with some bouncing physics that I don't quite understand, but the bounce is cool anyway. Bounces are pretty inconsistent in this game, and if you've ever tried to get the Golden Sam statue in this level, you'll know what I mean. You've also got that skip that I mentioned before in the casual section. Here you're supposed to burp the sign away, but if you can hold spin as you're landing, then you just get that. And it really is as easy as holding spin. There's not really a timing thing to worry about or anything. We skip a lot of this slide here just by sliding down to the very end. It's usually pretty long otherwise. And then we burp to actually destroy two signs, which is really, really cool. Now, I mentioned the skip before in the casual section, but you can spin a sign just by jumping and landing on it and spinning. That sign there, you're not supposed to be able to break without the burp because it's got one of those music boxes next to it. But if you can just hold the spin button as you're landing, you just break the sign anyway. No timing. But it saves the burp there for this sign on top of the washing machine, and that saves a whole bunch of navigation getting on top of that there. Not to mention this little wall jump mechanic saves you going down the slide again to hit that sync sign. One other really cool technical bit of this run that's pretty easy to miss is this little cutscene here. That end of level cutscene's playing out, and it's not really that skippable. But Taz actually has control there, and you can see Taz just moving around and dying and everything. To my understanding, they're trying to get back towards the end of the level during this cutscene, and you pretty much lose no time from the cutscene because you're moving while it's playing. The next level has a cool skip. You're supposed to break the grates on this igloo by turning off the electricity, but if you just literally jump up on top of it, you can break the Taz Wanted sign there. There's also another really cool glitch in this level, which I found casually as well. If you just mash jump on a slippery surface, then you get a lot more control over Taz. Golden rule is never spin on a slippery surface, but you can just keep jumping and it gives you a lot more control. You could then climb up slippery walls like they did in the run here. You get the elephant pong, which I'm going to imagine is one of the more annoying bits of the run to optimize. The elephant will get faster every time you scare it, and you basically got to score 3 points against this guy. Now, one thing that's very easy to forget about is the eating mechanic. So Taz has eaten that sign there and spat it out against the mirror. I usually break that sign by getting hit by this box back into the mirror. But obviously you can do that just by spitting something into it. You never need spit until the last boss, but it can be useful throughout the game here and there. This level also has one of the wildest wall rides ever. You charge it up for a very long time, and then you go up that entire wall to get over. Usually you'd have to come into this room from the top, but that saves a whole bunch of navigation around the level. While we're on this level, I have my one contribution to this game. This is a little out of bounds trick that I found. This door is supposed to open and scare you with a little truck, but you can get caught on it and go into this truck area. Completely useless, but hey, at least I found something. Now, speaking of out of bounds tricks, it's time to go back to the run. I never knew this about Taz, but you can just pause clip out of bounds, which is really cool. You have to kind of have an object pushing you into a wall, but there we go, pause clip out of bounds, and then skip the entire trip down to the bottom floor. The bottom floor you have to go through a very slow elevator, so this definitely saves a bunch of time doing that clip. I messed around with a few similar clips and they're pretty easy to pull off. I actually got into this minecart section, but not in the minecart. Unfortunately, it's not super useful, but it's worth noting that it is possible to do it. Next up we have the shopping level, and one thing that I totally forgot about until watching this run was that you have this like shopping cart object. I guess that's how you're supposed to break that sign there. But you can actually bring the shopping cart object out and use it to get through the level just a little bit quicker here and there. One other thing this game has which is really cool is a lot of parkour stuff, so you can jump up on this little sign here and get up on there. You're supposed to ride up a platform there, but this game is absolutely full of geometry that you can just jump on, and it's so fun working with it. Now we have another level, which is the construction level. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this one, as most of the tech is reused from previous levels. Although it does always remind me of that one construction level from Toy Story 2. Next up we have one of the most annoying bosses in the game. It's this Gladiator Tunes thing. It's just a 2-minute auto-scroller. You have to get more dots than the Daffy Duck does, and as long as you got more at the end of the 2 minutes, you win. Now we have the Haunted level, and this one has that skip that I was talking about before. If you ride up this wall, you can skip that really slow room with the record player, which slows you down. And there's also a basement in that building as well that you need to access, but it's really slow to get down to the basement. And to avoid getting down into the basement, there's a really cool sort of clip you can do here. You literally just jump over the level geometry, and Taz will fly out into the basement area. You're supposed to be turned into this ball object here, and it's really tricky to navigate this room because you got to jump over the electric cables and stuff. But you just hit all the switches with Taz, and then that last switch there, and then you're pretty much done. So that one clip there saves so much time. Now the world record actually misses a trick here, so you're supposed to get onto the chair, and during the cutscene you get clipped up through that roof, and the second place run here does get that successfully. So world record might have a bit of time to save on that section. You can see it looks like the world record is going for it, because they're like charging up a spin before getting onto the chair, but then don't quite make it through the roof there, unfortunately. Anyway, this level continues to get more and more broken because we have this little minecart section, and you can basically get over the little wall there and jump into it. Then we have this Taz wanted sign to break. Normally you'd have to ride the minecart through the whole track, and that takes a whole bunch of time, but why not just do this? Taz then falls out of bounds and goes back to the start, where we have yet another cool skip, riding up this wall to get the sign at the top at the start of the level. Normally there's a whole bunch of navigation to get to that sign, so it's really cool to see that nav skipped. We have Granny Canyon next, and this level's really cool because it starts off, you've got this long road that you've got to get through to get to the main section. But if you just ride up the wall and jump out of bounds, when Taz voids back in, he voids into the main section of the level. So that saves so much time from the start of the level navigation. Here you've got a really brutal section of the run though. You've got several of these sign cutscene skips in a row. Now I haven't really talked much about those cutscene skips, but it's worth mentioning they're not super easy to pull off. But there we go, they skipped a few of the cutscenes. And one thing I'll mention about this level is that you can get a lot of boosts off these cacti. Taz goes all the way up there, and then there's this really cool boost into the thing here where you get actually punched into it. So normally these punches would be inconvenient, and that one still is in all honesty, but you get punched into this thing and it saves time. I think if you had tried to jump into it directly, the puncher guy would have just punched you out of the way anyway, so it wouldn't have helped. You've then got Cartoon Strip Mine, and this has a really weird skip here. So this drill, you're supposed to go all the way through an underground section and hit the drill. But somehow they're doing a cutscene skip there where they're like clipping in and getting that TNT. Cool stuff. Now, just for context on how much that drill skip saves, it saves this whole underground section, which honestly is one of the most annoying parts of the game. I will speed it up a little bit, but you basically got to wait for these electricity things, and they just keep going and keep going. And not only do you have to get across this one bridge, you have to get across a completely other second bridge as well. Keep in mind, this footage is sped up. You have to be incredibly patient through this section to get through it. So that skip for the drill is one of the biggest skips in the game by the looks of it. Anyway, back to the run itself, we have this really cool jump to get on top of the roof here. It can be a bit sketchy with the guard there, but they make it pretty well. And this level's broken up into two main sections. You've got the top bit and then the lower bit. And from clipping out of bounds in this level, I know that like it is geometrically actually like that. It is a huge level vertically if you get out of bounds. And there's no loading tricks, like they actually put all the stuff in there. Now, world record here goes for a strat, which unfortunately gets missed. You're supposed to clip into the roof there. And you can sort of see what it's like from the second place run by Milk Games here. You clip into the roof bit there, and then you can go and break all these signs just by spinning around the edge like that. Now, world record unfortunately has to go in and then pull it back up strap. What you're really supposed to do is jump on this little platform and then like leverage it up so you can get towards the signs there. It appears Taz already had an object eaten, so that helps get that sign there, and then he's leveraged it up to get the other one. This sign is one of the more annoying ones in the game, not only because the process of getting it is annoying, but it's really far out of the way in the level. Getting back from the sign though is really easy, because all you need to do is get caught by a guard here, and then the guard brings you back all the way through this huge cavern section. Now after this we have quite a long boss fight. He's supposed to break all these boxes with TNT, but realistically you can just ride up the wall and get out of bounds. All you actually need to do is break these 4 yellow boxes with TNT, so as long as you've done that you can get through the boss fight pretty quickly. This fight would be several minutes without these clips, but it's pretty quick with the clips. One thing that I will mention about this fight is that the TNTs take different times to blow up if you're on different difficulties of the game. So from memory, I think the harder difficulty is actually faster for this boss fight because the TNTs are blowing up quicker to try and make it harder. Apart from that, difficulty does a lot to affect the requirements for 100%ing the game, like how many sandwiches are available to grab and how many objects you need to destroy. It also affects some bounty stuff as well. Anyway, after a really cool cutscene of flying through space, which is skipped in the run, Taz ends up in Tazland. Now, spoilers, we are about to see the end of the game here, so skip ahead if you don't want to see that to the next chapter. But Tazland, there are 7 signs to get. But you can see there are no signs actually being gotten. We're just zooming through towards the end of the level. We have another really cool respawn skip. By falling off there, we respawn up on the bridge. And normally in a level, you would get the 7 signs, and then that opens up the end of the level section where you get whatever object you're pulling into the next area. Tazland works a little bit differently to that. When you get the 7 signs, it opens up a door to get into the volcano, which is like the last area of the level. Now we got another little death warp here, and this is the volcano. You'll see that door is closed. But by flying out around the edge of the volcano, we get out of bounds towards the back, and we can just zoom in through here. Which makes Tazland the shortest level in the run, and so satisfying to watch because there's no signs, and it is a pretty annoying level to get all 7 signs. Now we come into the final bosses. So we got Disco Volcano here, which I used to love as a kid for some reason. But basically, yeah, he's going to try and blow you up, and if you blow him up first, you win. It's a pretty easy boss fight to do. One thing that I'll mention if you're playing this casually is make sure you wait until he's run around to the other side a little bit. Otherwise, you sort of see he's luring Sam over to the switch before jumping across to Sam. Otherwise, he would just turn around and run back the other way. After this fight, we find out that Tweety Bird is the true final boss, and we're fighting it in the Hidden Bird, which is a sick pun. You can see here that eating and spitting out the boxes is actually required here. So when I played this on PC, I made sure to actually map those buttons in advance, otherwise I would have got here and not have an eat button, which would have been a bit awkward. Also, the shield renders really weirdly. Its rendering is opaque there, but it's supposed to be transparent on the console versions. Now, there are 3 phases to this fight, and the last one is actually kind of annoying. So you got these 4 switches here, and there's like different speeds for each of the switches. You'll see that one on the left turned off really quickly, and the second one in turned off a lot slower. You're supposed to have all 4 switches on at once, and you're supposed to trigger the longest lasting one first and then go through to the shortest lasting one, because that's the only way you can have all 4 on at once. Now, as far as I can tell, the order for how these switches work is actually random, so you'd have to figure it out every time you play the game, which is why they hit one of those short switches which they shouldn't have hit yet. Anyway, that's the whole run finished, and big congrats on the 3346. A very impressive run indeed. Now, I will mention we also have the 100% category, which has some rich depth to it, but I'm not going to talk about it in this video just because it's any percent with more sandwiches and destructible objects. 100% honestly on this game is not very fun. I have done it, but it's really just going around and breaking as many objects as you can see, and it slows the pace down a bit more. Alright, now we'll move on to looking at the TAS of this game. So there is no published TAS on TAS videos, but there is this YouTube video here by Toxic Pinhead who does any percent in 37:38. Now you might be wondering why is this slower than RTA. One of the big reasons is the loading screens. The TAS is done on the GameCube emulated Dolphin, so the loading screens are going to take a lot longer than PC. Not to mention this TAS is about 3 years older than the current RTA world record. Part of why I started looking into TAS Wanted again is because I was thinking about TASing it now that BizHawk can do Dolphin, at least with the interim build. But this TAS is pretty good anyway, so I don't think I'd have a whole lot that I can really add to it. One immediate thing you'll notice about the TAS is rather than having to buffer these cutscene skips, the TAS just gets them pretty much all first try. Obviously a lot faster than an RTA in that regard. They can also get his guards to have some pretty close calls here. And everything's just going to be pretty clean, like these things here where you clip them through the fence from the other side and everything. And being like 4 years old, the TAS does use some older strats, like going down the bottom here rather than just climbing the wall to get up to the cannon. Although it does look about as fast anyway to do that. But of course the TAS can optimize some of the harder sections of the run, like here where you're doing your movement without being able to see it across some treacherous water. The TAS is already at that ending section. After struggling with Elephant Pong, the first boss, it is really satisfying to see the TAS pull this one off. Just in like 2 scares there, for example, getting the elephant over the other side with a goal. It is a lot harder than it looks to do this minigame. Also, I'm not sure how it compares to the current RTA strat, but the TAS has this really cool section where they clip through the door there using the object. Also, they've like spat an object into the wall there and then somehow got it out there. I'm not entirely sure what's going on here, but it looks cool regardless. You do need the doors open for this section though, even though you can use that spin strat to get over the top of them, purely because you need to get this little floor buffer object through here to buff the floor there. This section here is actually pretty frustrating to do. It's very hard to get the percentage adding up in a nice way there. If you go too quickly over it, the percentage doesn't add up like that. But generally the strategy is just go in square shapes going inside. The controls are really janky on this thing though. Now amazingly, the TAS does the clip to get downstairs without even using a pause, which I honestly can't believe. That's absolutely wild. I didn't know it was possible. Now the TAS doesn't really need to worry about these punching boxes because it can just get them to punch you whatever way you want them to. RTA does a little bit of that, but TAS can always be certain of the outcome. Not to mention guards, the TAS can avoid those pretty easily without being caught. TAS also does this really cool thing with the battery here where they trigger the cutscene on top of the battery there and then use it to clip out of bounds. I'm not sure how much time that saves, but it must just save exiting the battery tunnel normally. Now in this room here you have to hit 3 of those little dart things to get the dartboard filled out. But the precision here allows you to just actually spit an object at that very last one and get it there. Now one thing I didn't mention in the RTA run was this little bit here. So at the start of the level you can just go up this gate thing. You're supposed to put the gate down with a button and then race to it really quickly before it goes up again. But you can just do that in both RTA and TAS there. The TAS does this same clip to get out of bounds in TAS Haunted here, making their way down to this room and avoiding being turned into the ball. Just a little bit of cleaner movement here. And yes, the TAS does successfully get the clip through the roof at the end of this cutscene. Just obviously set up a little bit faster than what RTA is able to do. In Granny Canyon, we see this little skip here again, where you got to do 3 cutscene skips in a row on this thing. In the RTA run we saw, unfortunately they didn't skip the very last bit of that cutscene here, but the Taz was able to in the end. Also, we have a little difference with this barrel poster here. So in RTA we got hit into the barrel and the cutscene played out, but in Taz you get hit out of the barrel, but it seems like the sign still did activate, which is really cool. I'm not sure if they were supposed to be going for that in RTA. But then we have the end of the level here. You can get this last sign just by hitting that. But with the cutscene skip, the sign doesn't break right away, and you can see that the gates still close when they get to the end of the level here, and they sort of have to wait for that last sign to break still. Pretty cool they get to the end of the level before it's even opened yet. Next up we have Cartoon Strip Mine, and there's a really cool strat at the start here. I did mention before that we had to like clip into the drill, but the Taz has a different way of doing this. And it sort of goes near the start of the level and clips through that bit. And it actually does seem a bit faster than RTA, at least from what I can tell, from what I can see there. And then the Taz does a really big clip out of bounds there to get into this little section. And then makes their way back out the wrong way from the drill cave. So that sequence is entirely different to RTA. I'm not entirely sure which one is quicker, but the Taz does seem pretty fast through that. The Taz pretty much does this minecart section normally, and you can actually boost on this minecart quite a bit, and you go very fast when you're boosting, so this is pretty impressive to see here. I'm actually wondering if you could clip into this minecart section and break the sign, whether that would be faster. It might have to be like your last poster, because it'd be hard to get out of the section here, but, you know, it could have some potential there. Here we have another example of the beauty of Taz. We go straight into one of these punching boxes, which is very dangerous in this section because it would just punch you off the edge. But the Taz is able to spin into it in such a way that it punches you forward rather than backwards. So that saves going on that lower path there, which is heaps of windy to get to the end here. And the Taz then does make its way through here and gets the clip up to break these signs really quickly. Again, I'll just mention that the Taz can get these cutscene skips first try, so when it breaks a sign it just does that and goes view hint on the map, and it saves a bit of time over your RTA not having to fluff around with it all the time. Now, from the bottom of the mine you're supposed to take this elevator up to the top. The Taz does this really weird strat where they get a huge up warp in the elevator and then like fall through the top of the level. This actually isn't much faster than just going up the elevator normally, since it's pretty well instant, but hey, it's cool to see. Right in this section we get another example of moving during a cutscene. Taz breaks this light here and then is moving in this cutscene. You'll see the end of level prompt come up here that Taz has walked all the way over to this section without being able to see it at all. Once again, another thing you can do in a Taz setting. Finally we have that Taz land level, but the Taz uses pretty much the same strat as RTA here. Just a few death warps to get towards where the volcano is, and then clipping around the right hand side of the volcano to get in without breaking any of the signs. Again, I just find this so cool that you don't actually need to break the signs in the last level. The Taz does finish up the final bosses as normal, and you can sort of see here what the transparency on the boss is supposed to look like. They do mention that they could have saved some time in this fight with better RNG manipulation, although to my understanding this was a pretty big project to be working on. I will mention again, this Taz is a little bit slower than RTA, but a big reason is with the GameCube loading times, and also that they were optimizing for in-game time when doing this Taz. That's going to be all for this video, and thanks so much for watching.